I used to work here, now solve your own problems. And #X200B. A little over a decade ago I worked for the local hardware outfit as the stores manager. I took the job because it was local, paid okay and was supposed to be relatively stress-free. Unfortunately, the reality of it was that the assistant manager, Colin, was a dickhead with an inferiority complex who had it in for me because I was more qualified than he was. Although I had absolutely no interest in climbing the corporate ladder or taking his job. The job itself was overtasked and understaffed, and things were only getting busier as there was a building boom happening in the area at the time. As a result, I quickly ended up being run off my feet every day trying to keep up with a constant influx of goods and outgoing orders. To make matters worse, the overall manager, John, decided to reassign my two offsiders as delivery staff, leaving me on my own. When I protested, I was told to solve my own problems. I somehow kept up with the workload. But knowing this was not going to work in the long run, I continued in my attempts to get more staff in my area. Even just one offsider would have made a huge difference. I tried reasoning with John, saying, "What if I get sick or injured? How will you get the orders done then?" His solution was that he would have some of the casual staff from the front retail area fill in. If that happened, I laughed in his face and suggested that they could not find their own asses using both hands. Probably not the best way to handle things. Once again I was told to solve my own problems. Okay then. Fine, I will do just that. The situation continued becoming more difficult each week. The incoming goods were increasing in volume to keep up with demand. Think 2 semi-trailers per day. And as outgoing orders were to take priority, the incoming goods began piling up. Colin decided to rear his ugly head and make a fuss about stock not being checked in and stored on time, and in one of our more robust discussions I seriously considered rearranging his face and told him so. He decided to go on an early lunch, run away, and hid from me in his office for the rest of the week. That was the day I realized I need to get out of this place. As for solving my problems, well, obviously I was looking for a new job. I answered an ad for correctional officers and attended a meeting for applicants. Then sat the psych tests, interviews, and was finally accepted for the training to begin in 1 month. Perfect timing. The next Monday I walked into John's office and gave 2 weeks' notice. John was absolutely appalled that I would consider leaving such a good job. He tried offering me a raise of $1,000 per year. I laughed and said my starting pay was already $15,000 more than I was getting here, and walked out. Now you would think a smart manager would immediately take steps to cover my position and begin training a replacement. Nope. Nothing happened for the next week and a half until on my last Thursday John finally showed up with a replacement, some entirely forgettable teenager who plainly had no chance of keeping up. I trained him as best I could and the next day said my goodbyes. 2 months later I walked in as a customer, flush with my new job money. The place was an utter mess. There was shit everywhere, unprocessed goods still in sealed boxes. Pallets of sheeting just dumped in the truck yard and no one could find anything. The original guy the first trained was nowhere to be seen, and 4 new young guys with haunted-looking faces were madly scrambling about trying to sort their shit out. No one knew where anything was, where anything goes, or even how to do a basic invoice check. Total disaster, which brought a warm glow to my evil black told you so heart. Upon seeing me, John quickly pulled me aside and asked if I can help out and show the new guys what to do. I took great pleasure in reminding him that I had repeatedly warned him this could happen, and then not only did I no longer work here, but that he will have to, and I quote, "solve your own problems." That wound will never fully heal. He will carry it the rest of his life. The last line got me. This story reminds me when I quit as an IT and help desk manager for a large company with 450 computers and 22 agencies. All because of the shitty boss I had, that shouted everybody no matter how hard and good we worked. Then 2 months later I came across to one manager who told me everybody misses me badly. The guy who replaced me was an absolute jerk, incompetent, solved nothing and hides in his office. Soon later my outsourcing company lost this large account, because nobody could fit my position after I left. This made me smile wide. I mean, if he wants to hire you on as a private contractor at 20 times your original rate. Solve your own problems, indeed. I love it. In Afrikaans we have a saying, wie nie wil hoor nie. Moe marvel, he, she who does not want to listen, will get what she deserve. Aha, I, too, worked for one of those. His go-to line was do your deal. He told me to do my deal for almost a decade, while I juggled an impossible workload, and managed varying degrees of burnout, all the while earning him fat bonuses because my department ran so lean. I believe he got himself a new Harley with the last one. He also sobbed like a little girl when I gave notice, and asked, "Aren't we friends? That's how you treat your friends? Holy shit." And John, like every other manager, did not learn a single lesson. A job as a correctional officer isn't something that sounds very low stress to me. That tells me your job in the hardware store must have been absolute hell. I saw that end coming, and it warmed my heart when it did. This was like my last IT job, which was actually my first IT job. I'll hand it to the guy. He took a risk on me and then let me train myself. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I googled my way to being a halfway competent tech, but he'd keep me in the office answering calls and would need me to dictate whether he thought I'd be able to handle it or not, which of course almost all the time was no. You're years away from that. So work piled up on the 2 field techs we had. Oh, yeah, this company was 5 people. That's it. Our entire company could take a trip together in a mildly large SUV. I got tired of answering calls, having to check in with them on whether or not I could do the call, and having them pile it on the techs who hate me now for not doing anything. One of the techs was the owner's kid, too. Smart guy. He bailed on the company for greener pastures. Now we're down to 4 people. I started looking around elsewhere and found my current job. So I applied thinking there'd be no way they'll take me. They took me. Immediately. I put in my notice with Grumpy Gus and he lost it. Was devastated because he thought the other field tech and I would take over the company when he retired in a few short years. Problem was, the company was bleeding out money, losing clients to more modern MSPs, like my current company, and the business was tanking. He wanted to retire and have it employee-owned, meaning we'd pay him for the business when he retired through profits of the business, meaning there's 0 chance we'd see a profit on it for years. So he started sending me out on field calls in my last 2 weeks. Finally, I thought. But yeah, there were some times I got stuck on an issue and I had to call the other field tech for help. I was new, after all, and hadn't received any actual training despite almost a year of being told I would. Boss calls me and asks why I'm calling the other tech while he's busy, and to just ask boss for help. I do, and he gives me incredibly vague, intentionally bad information. What is the computer plugged into? Cat5e plugged into a Cat5e wall port. There is no way you can know that. You're too new. The cable says Cat5e. The wall port says Cat5e. But what is the computer plugged into? What do you mean? Oh, you'd better not be this stupid for your new job. They'll fire you in a minute. So I walked out right then and there. I was very respectful to the clients and advised them that they will need to call the office in a New tech will be able to come out and fix the issue. Obviously I was not going to get support on any calls I went on, and he'd send me on calls he knew were over my head, so I wasn't having any of it. I called my new place, told them what was happening, and asked if I could start the next day. They happily agreed, and almost a year later, I've never been happier at a job. Ever. My previous place, it's now closed permanently. He cut his losses after I quit and the office manager quit. She emailed me and told me he threw the nastiest temper tantrum when I left and destroyed about $3,000 worth of computers he was trying to sell. Now I have plenty of support on every ticket. I work from home every day. We use more modern methods to manage networks and systems, and they're paying for a boatload of certs for me without any contract dictating a length of employment required afterward. I actually have health insurance now. I'm getting paid far more than I was before, and life is pretty good inside this home. Outside is still a dumpster fire, but inside is good. That's when you explain that your consultant rates are much higher than your pay was. I was working as a hotel night auditor when I got pregnant with my oldest. I'd been having complications for a while, and my doctor told me if my blood pressure was down at my next appointment in 2 weeks I was being out in long-term sick leave. On my way home, I stopped in at work to tell my boss exactly that. Fortunately, I took the day shift desk clerk, also a friend of mine, with me as a witness to this meeting, because 2 weeks later, when I went in to give the boss my documentation, she said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? We need you to train your replacement." She shut up when I asked her if she'd like me to go get my friend who would verify that I did indeed tell her 2 weeks earlier that I'd likely be written off. I miss that job. This was over 16 years ago now. As said, baby is now 16. But I most certainly do not miss that particular boss. My starting pay was already $15,000 more. Typo, or true, smiley face. Love the good told you so story. Why are people just too stubborn to listen? I'm also very surprised that most managers don't know anything about what their team is doing. I understand that you're hiring the right people for the job, but shouldn't you know at least a little about how the day-to-day works? He made mistakes so that the only outcome would be failure. Glad you could use his own words against him. I love this. I've been in this situation in multiple jobs. The best one was when I was the event manager, sales manager, social media manager, floor manager for a restaurant, and my boss would constantly go above my head to say I was lazy because he could never see me doing anything, or I was on social media, aka my job. The higher-ups could never understand because from their end I was doing what was expected of me. It wasn't until I left and came back for dinner a month or so later that I finally got a thank you, and people who said how much they missed me and had no idea how much I had been doing while I was there. The place is closed now. I want to see the John goddamn face when you told him. A blue hardware store in a mountain suburb. I also used to work there. I have a repeated behavior when I recognize these moments based off of a Reddit comment I read a long time ago that made me laugh. Well, if it isn't the consequences of one's own actions. Quote. What a wonderful morning, MC. It's amazing that so many companies, big and small, don't realize how important a few working individuals are. They make the mistake of thinking that only managers with offices are the only valuable staff and everyone else is easily replaceable.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.